So really exciting next top coming up here. We've got a couple of speakers who are going to be teaming up to talk to us about external threat hunters are red teamers. Now, as someone who constantly loves, observes, and is really just interested in the overlap between red and blue teams to keep it in a very simple manner here, this talk title really kind of caught my interest, if you will, because I don't know, it seems like a really true statement, one that I could kind of get behind here. So without too much delay, because they've got something really cool lined up for us here, I want to introduce our next two speakers. I'm going to try and pronounce these names correctly here, but I'll be very honest with you all. These are tough names. So we have Dave Maynor, I think. Dave, let me know if I pronounced the R correctly in your name, for those of you
Oh,
who
you
are...
got it. You nailed it.
I got it. All right, good stuff. And we've also got George Orchilles joining as well. And I think, George, you're going to be starting first, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to hand over to you, sir. But gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today. We're very excited to have you at the Threat Hunting Summit. Looking forward to the talk. George, over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for that intro. Nice to see you there, Dave. And welcome, everyone. We are so excited. We are going to try to contain ourselves. But we have an awesome talk. I know everyone says that about their talk, but this one we created just for you. This is the first release of that talk. And yeah, it has a pretty cool name, but let's do a little TLDR just to set expectations. Dave, you want to do a quick TLDR on what we're going to talk about?
I really do. I can't wait. And just to be clear, George is containing himself. I am making no such claims. I'm putting it all out there. Just to start with, the title in virtual conferences and whatnot, you can kind of see titles sometimes and go, oh, that sounds cool. I once watched a talk title called How to Do Security on Top of Mount Everest. And I was like, well, I didn't know there were computers there. I can't wait to see that talk. It turned out it was more of a metaphorical on top of Mount Everest. So we wanted to assure everybody this isn't while the talk is sensational, the topic actually is why red teamers and internal threat hunters really are cut from the same cloth, and tooling is similar. And there's a lot of ability to repurpose tool techniques and procedures between your red team and a external threat hunting team. And really what we're trying to do, and this is the point of this presentation, isn't so much this is what everybody's doing right now. We view this as where people will be when they evolve their purple team practices in a good 2 to 3 years. So we wanted to give this audience a sneak peek of it, first and foremost.
Exactly. So quick, who am I, Dave?
Well, I'm David Maynor. The R is kind of hard, but Maynor. I previously have worked for organizations like Cisco Talos, where I led the threat hunting team for Europe and the Middle East, in which we were the first to respond to NotPetya on behalf of the Ukrainian government. We also have found and published several different APT activity, like VPN filter. Actually, just too many to actually name. But I worked on threat hunting for a long time, and before that, my skill set really was just red teaming. I like to be a very creative red teamer. So I was a red teamer before I became a threat hunter, and I'm occasionally an entrepreneur, but I like to be a threat hunter first.
Yeah, and of course, very humble speaking with you here, Dave. Dave is an industry rock star. So when I was introduced to him through his wife, actually, that I work with, Lawyer Liz, on Twitter, I'm like, wow, this is an awesome opportunity. So here we are. And I'm Jorge Orchilles, real quick, Chief Technology Officer at SCYTHE. Prior to that was 10 years leading the offensive team at Citigroup. Before that, I started as a sysadmin. I saw some people saying, hey, who started as sysadmin? That's me. Then I got into Security Operations Center for 1 year at a company called Terramark, which Centurylink and Level 3 are pretty fond of. And then I got into vulnerability assessment at Citi. created the pen test team, or really the function, which meant we exploited production systems at a company that does trillions of dollars of transactions in a day. Was scary, but we showed the value. Then built the red team, and then figured out that doing yearly or biannual red team engagements really left our red team kind of not doing much. And we figured out that purple teaming was a great way of doing that. So that's us, but enough about us. What are we going to talk about today? So we are going to level set. What is red teaming? Because every red team talk, we have to debate what red teaming is, right? Then we're going to cover what external threat hunting is, and we're going to do a lot of comparisons. So if you're new to red team, we hope you learn a lot. If you're new to external threat hunting, we hope you learn a lot. And if you know about both but aren't using similar tools in tradecraft, I think we will give you a good reason to do that. So we'll cover things like attack infrastructure, acquiring infrastructure, both from red teaming and from external threat hunting. We're obviously going to cover C2, right? Command and control and C2 matrix, and then circling out that with analysis and refinement, analysis and response. So we're very excited. So I'll go first. What is red team? And I got this from the Red Team Journal. It's the practice of looking at a problem or situation from the perspective of an adversary. And us in InfoSec, we obviously stole this term from somewhere else, right? We can go back to military terms. They do red teaming. First exercises were after the Vietnam War, where they didn't do so well and decided they should probably exercise and test each other from the adversary perspective. And our goal in red teaming is to make the blue team better, really to work together. And not only test technology like you normally do on a pen test, focusing on preventive controls, but testing and measuring people, process, and technology, and really focusing on those detective controls that you might not be able to patch. Now, the effort for this is pretty manual. Yes, there's a bunch of command and control tools. Yes, there's ways of creating automated attack infrastructure, and there's even ways to automate some of the TTPs that you do. But at the end of the day, you can't replace that person, right? So in no way do we talk about replacing the entire red team here. We need the people. And the frequency is intelligence-led, right? When we go to Black Hat, when we go to DEF CON, when we see a talk, some new techniques, a new tool, a new exploit, an O-Day, right? We can test all of those and make our defense better. And then we are seeing some regulators, particularly international, not so much in the US, but Bank of England, European Central Bank, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Singapore Monetary Authority of Singapore have regulations. I'm sure you've heard of CBEST or Tiber EU, and they are coming to the US. So if you're here, you'll probably get some through the OCC, generally through the financial area first, and then through others. And really the most important thing of red teaming is the customer. The customer is the blue team. It's not your operations team. It's not your developers. It's generally the blue team. Everyone that does defense, right? Your security operations center, your hunt teams, your incident response teams, your threat hunting teams, and pretty much everyone in an organization. So lots of definitions. There's a reference here, and at the end, there is a slide with all our references, right? We didn't make all this up. We stand on shoulders of giants here and call out all the references at the end. So what is external threat hunting, Dave?
Well, before I go into that, I just wanted to give you the opportunity, George. Would you like to start the presentation and boil down into a pedantic discussion about whether offensive tools are useful to security or not? I've certainly seen that a lot on social media.
I think we should skip that debate for now, or we will run out of time.
Indeed. So keeping with that theme, while some people will say, why are you using offensive tools? They actually do have a great point, and this is another example for it. And that leads directly into external threat hunting. Basically, if you're doing normal threat hunting or internal threat hunting, you have a team that is using forensics information from both your company and then TTPs from the bad guy to determine if the actor is currently operating in your environment or if they have ever operated in your environment. External threat hunting is really focused around whether not so much whether the actor is currently operating, but tracking the TTPs for actors that may be operating in your environment in the future, that may have an interest in attacking you in the future. In addition to that, you're also searching for techniques that are being widely used by attackers now that might not be in use by attackers that are targeting your environment, but could manifest themselves in the future. And you want to be aware of how that manifestation can look. And why do you want all this? Well, all of this really has the same goal as red teaming. We're doing this to make our blue team better, to make our blue team, our red team, our purple team more informed and able to execute on their missions better. But most importantly, as I'm sure everybody has done this at some point, you've sat around and had a theoretical discussion with somebody about what an actor could be doing or what it would look like. And theory is great, but firsthand knowledge is greater. And I always stress people to get firsthand knowledge of these kind of things. So the last real value of external threat hunting is the ability to test your assumptions. Now, this is a very manual process currently. I do this at a company called Centurylink in their Black Lotus labs. I do external threat hunting like this. And it's very manual driven, but I tell people that it's more an art than a science, and I cringe every time I say that because it's kind of admitting that we don't have a good process, and that's exactly what that means. So this is one of the attempts to refine that process, add rigor to it, and add requirements that we can meet. So while it's a manual process, we use information like the C2 matrix to kind of power what tool sets we can use and how to use them. And this is a this is a process that never really stops. We are always hunting for attackers. Any given day of my week, I am in a different phase of hunting different actors. I never stop. In addition to informing the blue, red, and purple teams of what we find, making their process better, we've also found success in informing company officers, especially risk and compliance type officers, as to what actors are capable of, and kind of helping them understand not something that's currently happening, but how to understand something that may happen in the future. Why external threat hunting? We just went through the, this presentation is about giving the who, the what, the why, the when, and the how of external threat hunting. So we've now hit the why of external threat hunting. And now let me be clear right up front that this is not a solution for every company. I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody present a really good idea or a really cool idea of a different way to handle a security problem. And the first thing people rush to social media to talk about is how this is a dumb solution. It wouldn't work for my company, or it wouldn't work for company X because we're still trying to get like a blue team program in place. So why would we be doing this instead of building our blue team practice? You shouldn't be. This is not a technique for every company. It's not a technique for a low maturity organization, but for organizations that have the maturity, the headcount, and the vision, this is a great solution to bridge the gap between public information that's being made about actors and your own need for information about actors to protect your environment. Like I said, the workflow for this is really hard to develop without a certain amount of gut instinct. And hopefully this presentation starts the renaissance of this planning, where we're moving away from gut planning to a more rigorous planning. That's part of the reason why George and I are working together, because while I've done red teaming and threat hunting, he's really got a lot of experience in the planning and operations, making the processes more rigorous for red team environments. And he's helping, he's driving the effort on our part to make these types of testing more rigorous and fit into the purple teaming framework.
Yeah, and yeah, on that value proposition that you mentioned, right? Like both teams, the red team and your external hunting, right, is all about providing that value, right? And I think you're going to touch on that right now.
Right. You gotta be aware I myself have fallen into many a boondoggle in the pursuit of this type of information, or a sig dev disease kind of thing. Like uh, I have, gotten an idea and followed it, and it turned out not to, the basis of the idea probably wasn't all that useful. What I found probably wasn't all that useful, but the intellectual curiosity kept me going. And while that was fun, it actually didn't provide really any value for the company. And the value is kind of hard to quantify at first, because what you really need to be doing is informing other teams of things that may or may not have happened yet. And so it's hard when you have a good idea for something that hasn't happened yet, or you have a theory that you're testing, until it does happen. People are like, well, that may not have been all that useful. But then, right after it happens, or an attempt that hopefully you're now able to stop, they'll be like, well, that was great. You got to be able to bridge that divide between those two states. I remember a time not long ago where the type of debate about the value that these types of tests would bring to an organization were actually all about red teaming. Like, a lot of people didn't think that red teaming had any value, and that had to be discussed a lot. But the value here is the clear, concise value here is being able to use tools, techniques, and procedures that you develop for your red team to enable your external threat hunting, to better inform your own security practices. There's a lot of different ways to measure it. Most of it won't be a smoking gun. Most of it will be incremental improvements. But doing anything at this point to improve your security process is better than doing nothing.
Yeah, so when we talk about the needs of our teams, right? From discussing with Dave, we said these are the needs of the red team, and then he was sharing the needs of the external threat hunting team, and we realized they're all very, very similar, right? From a basic perspective, right? The red team gets in, they get into an infrastructure, and they pivot through that infrastructure. But more importantly, we need logs, right? If we're doing a zero knowledge red team engagement and I'm managing a team of 3 people, I need to know what they're doing, exactly what time they did it, what was the result, what was the impact, and make sure it was all logged, especially as you scale up, right? Running this as a 2-person red team is easy, right? Because you can just talk to that other person and share information. But in my last organization, we got up to a 12-person red team. And that scaling was so important to have these logs, because you have things like deconfliction. What happens if you're running a red team engagement and that the SOC or the blue team catches an active attack? First thing they're going to do is deconflict with you. You need to prove that it wasn't you and then make the right decisions. Or you can say, yep, that was us at exactly this time from this host. We executed that on this host, and this was the result. I think that's exactly what you're looking for on your team as well, right, Dave?
Yeah, strangely, external threat intelligence or external threat hunting, we're also doing a zero knowledge assessment. Instead of our own company, though, we're doing it of an actor. Just so I'm clear, there's no advocacy here to do anything illegal. We'll show you what we mean, but we are doing a zero knowledge assessment of an actor. We're trying to deal with actor evolution at this point, where new techniques that bad guys are using, like filtering, techniques that have shown up in the last couple of years, they're new, of like filtering, or making sure that there's like a multi-stage compromise and promotion process. So only like verified, vetted victims will get your payload, so they don't end up on like virus total. This is our answer to how will we get around those actor activities. So the ability to pivot through an infrastructure, the ability to have your red team, or I'm sorry, your external threat hunting team, no matter where they're based in the world, be able to look like to an attacker that they're inside, or the type of target that they're targeting, so they can get the payloads for then further analysis, right? That is one of the core tenets of this idea.
So when we talk and do and really plan for red team engagements, a lot of time is spent on planning. I feel like people that are new to red team think it's all just, getting shells and moving laterally and owning stuff, right? But just to put in perspective, my 2-day red team course has half a day of planning. The other half of the class is on the hands-on because that's what students want, but it's that important. And here, just to put a lot in one slide for you to digest very quick, we have a number of items that we think about when we plan, both the red team and the external threat hunting team. And we're going to dive deeper into some of these. Some we're going to skip over just because of time. But goals and objectives. The red team has goals and objectives. Those are generally similar to the objective of the adversary, but this is coming from the senior management. What do they want to test? What do they want to verify? They want to see if a particular threat actor would be able to cause the same thing that happened at Garmin in our organization. And external threat hunting also have goals and objectives, right? Cyber threat intelligence. Here we have differentiators. In red teaming, you want cyber threat intelligence to give you an adversary that has the opportunity, capability, and intent to target that target organization, right? You don't want to do a deep panda attack or an orange worm attack that's normally against healthcare if you're a financial, right? Like you can do it, but probably not the best use of your time. Then you want to emulate those TTPs, and that adversary behavior is what you're emulating. From the external threat hunting perspective, and Dave will go into an entire slide on this, is they need to pick a target list and figure out who they're going to go hunt. We both will have scopes. We'll both have exercise coordinators and project management, and this we can talk about for a long time, right? We want this exercise to be valuable, and it's great to have a project manager or a coordinator going through that, making sure everyone is in sync as you go through. Then you have roles of engagement. Here we have similarities as well. For example, both the red team and the external threat hunting should not break laws, right? Don't get arrested. And don't forget the purpose of the exercise. There is always an objective and a goal, and that is your focus. On the red team side, we don't want to bring down infrastructure or affect business processes. And on the external threat hunting side, you don't want to get into a knife fight with a threat actor and then attack infrastructure. Yeah.
Just to make this theory absolutely clear, external threat hunting for actors is designed to give you more information to help you understand how an actor works. You should not do anything that makes an actor who was previously not interested in you interested in you. So you shouldn't visualize this like you're knife fighting in an alley with an actor. It really is more like, you're doing advanced recon on an actor and snipping the little bits of information that can be used to inform your security team.
Exactly. And attack infrastructure. We both need to set up attack infrastructure. It's going to be the main focus of our talk moving forward, along with lessons learned. In the red team, we do analysis and response, where we want to see how the blue team reacted, how they detected, how they responded. On the external threat hunting side, we have a slide on this as well that we'll dive deeper into. It's about analysis and refinement. So how do you formulate a target list when you're doing planning, Dave?
Well, once again, I'm going to say this is more art than science, which, as I said earlier, it makes me cringe every time I see it, say it. But in reality, this is a moment where you need to be extremely intellectually honest with yourself, right? I can't tell you how many people I've come across that are like, oh yeah, I'm probably getting hit by this APT, and you look at their organization and you look at what they do, and they don't have any PII or useful data. They're not in any chain of events that would drive an APT to be interested in them, and you then have to kind of go, no, maybe not. They probably aren't focusing on you. Then you get the ego pushback of, well, yeah, but you know who I am? I'm the largest snowmobile dealer in South Dakota. That's just a funny example. That's not a real thing somebody's ever said to me. But if somebody said that, you'd be like, well, yeah, that probably doesn't interest a lot of APTs, right? So you have to be intellectually honest. You got to take off your security hunting cap for a moment. You got to put on your business analysis gap and actually take a look at what the company you're protecting is, what kind of resources they have, what kind of information they store, or like whether they're in a chain of events for something like COVID vaccine research or national defense organizations, and then match what your organization's threat model really is to an actor that would be interested in targeting them. And that's the most important part, the intellectual honesty. And then you have to be informed enough about adversarial posture to understand their opportunity, their intent, and their capability to actually attack your organization. And when you've done those two steps, the list of actors that you compile is the list that you would use for external threat hunting purposes.
So once we get the list of who we're going to go after, or on the red team side, we have the plan down, then we talk about attack infrastructure. And yes, this is one slide with a ton of things that we do, both on red team and external threat hunting. So take a screenshot or look at the slide, but I'm going to hit on the main things. On the red team side, we want to choose and procure external service providers. A lot of the time we use cloud environments, right? Because most of the targets are not going to block AWS or GCP or Azure or DigitalOcean, et cetera, right? Because then other processes break. But we do want to procure this in a way that is not attributable back to the red team, because then the blue team sees it, they're like, oh, this domain or this IP was purchased by George, and George is on the red team, so this red team, we don't have to worry about that, right? And it's going to be very similar for external threat hunters as well. You don't want to buy anything or spend with your personal credit card that attributes back to you. We then want to purchase domain names. We want to generate domain certificates, whether you purchase TLS certs or use Let's Encrypt. If you're going to do phishing, you have to set up mail servers. If you're going to do phishing to steal credentials or get them to a site to then download something, you have to set up those sites. And then for all of these, you need reputation, right? Because most mature organizations are going to have some sort of categorization of what domains you can access, right? Rarely do enterprise organizations just allow you to connect out to an IP address. So you have domains, but then those domains have to be classified with things that will be allowed out, right? Like perfect example is pornography. Most organizations block that. How they do it? Because that domain is categorized as such. So what do? You need to categorize your domains as things that won't get blocked and maybe won't even get decrypted, like finance and health, but don't tell anyone I said that. Then you actually set up.
George, how can you tell what pornography is?
I'm sorry?
How can you tell what pornography is?
It's generally based on the reputation that that domain is given. There's various different service providers, so they categorize them. It's different processes per each one. I'm familiar with how Palo Alto and Blue Coat, which is now Symantec, do it. But yeah, it's very little people-based. It's pretty easy to gain reputation. Another thing you can do is buy a domain that already had reputation but has expired and use that one. And the reason you do all the reason you do all this is to then set up your infrastructure, right? So we're going to talk about command and control shortly, but you have to set up all your tooling, pick a command and control server, and then get those servers and all that information sent somewhere so that you can view it centrally. And RedELK is what we're going to talk about shortly. RedELK was originally created for logging if the blue team was detecting you. Now, as we do all of this, we need to have operational security. Did you have any other comments on attack infrastructure before we head to OPSEC?
No, sir.
Cool. So in operational security, from the red team perspective, you want to ensure that all your systems are locked down, right? That only your red team members can access the administrative interfaces such as SSH, right? No one else should be SSHing to your service. Kind of like practice what we preach. We give these recommendations all the time. You need to do them too. Then when you create your payloads, you want to make sure that they only run in the target environment. This is called keyed payloads or execution guardrails if you speak MITRE ATT&CK. Then you want to make sure that the web properties aren't attributable to another threat actor. Maybe you attribute it to a threat actor you're emulating, but you can actually look through all that. And then store all your information wherever you host all your logs, encrypt that, right? Vet your payloads, get IOCs for all your payloads and everything you're going to do. Really makes deconfliction better. And then lastly, you want to detect if the blue team is investigating you or not. Any other comments here? Because I know you have some OPSEC stuff to talk about during acquiring infrastructure.
Right. Well, the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that the same techniques you use to find bad guys can use to find you. So if you're actually dealing with an attacker that's sophisticated enough to have filtering or like gating set up where only certain people in a certain geological geolocation will get payloads, or even from a different company, or they have a manual promotion process from like a first stage to a second stage, right? If they're that sophisticated, they're also sophisticated enough to know when somebody's like to have the same kind of tripwire set up to know when someone's hunting them. So when you are hunting them in an external capacity, always keep in mind, as you sneak onto them, they can sneak onto you. That was actually a quote from Hackers in 1995.
Exactly.
Just kind of a joke for people that don't think that movie has any relevancy. But seriously, they can find you.
Exactly. And just looking at the time, we've got about 8 minutes to go through 5 slides. So I'm going to speed this up. RedELK. RedELK is a tool created by the folks at Outflank. And shout out to Mark from Outflank, because when we posted that we were doing this talk, he actually wrote that they're planning to add in version 2 hunting capabilities for RedELK. So if you don't know what RedELK is an ELK stack that was originally made for the red team, and it was to aggregate all the logs. So again, I'm running a red team engagement. I have 4 or 5 operators. I want to know what they're all doing. So I want the C2 server communicating to me. I want the redirectors communicating to me. I want to see and maybe even give access to a white cell. So originally it started kind of like a red team SIM. And now, and this is the first time any of you see this, version 2, and thanks again to Mark for providing these bullets, will have a lot of really cool features. So another example of posting something on Twitter, someone else seeing it, being like, oh, we had similar ideas. This is what we have planned, and now we're going to meet in a couple of weeks and get this going even further. So pretty cool stuff.
Real quick, before we go on, this whole idea actually came from RedELK, as it started maybe a year ago when I was doing a lot of stuff on Hack the Box, and I wanted to record everything I was doing to be able to refine my Hack the Box skills, and RedELK was what I was using to capture it all. So it was really just, it's been there from the start of this idea. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, and it's an awesome, awesome project. So to visualize this, right? This is kind of like what red team infrastructure looks like, and what your external threat hunting infrastructure probably looks like too, right? On the top right, you have your C2 servers. We'll talk about command and control in the next slide. Then you have redirectors over on the left side. This is to make sure that if someone's coming to your red team site and they're coming from the target organization, then send it over to your C2s. And if it's not, maybe forward them somewhere else. And all of this is going into RedELK. RedELK is red and in the middle, right? It's an ELK stack that you send a bunch of data. And what's important here is the logging, right? The logging from those C2 servers, the logging from those redirectors are all normalized and put into data that we can now view. And who can view this? Well, the red team manager can view this, which is great, really how we're using it now. But you can also give access to a white cell if they want to see what's going on without actually having access to your C2 servers. And then you can query other security service providers, external ones, to see if any of your IOCs that you have triggered in the red team engagement are being shown on any of these services. So it's a really cool tool. And like we said, that version 2 will have some hunting capabilities, although Dave has been using this for about a year. So the next one is command and control. And I could probably talk about this for a long time, but at a high level, it's the influence an attacker has over a system that they have control over. You generally have a communication channel, which means HTTP most of the time, or other communication channels, such as DNS and one. And when we take over a system, when we compromise a system, we want to blend in. And we do that with heartbeats or beacons or callbacks, however you want to call it. And what that does is that every so often, that system you have compromised will call out to our C2 server. And you don't want to look like a pattern, do you? Because something calling out every 30 seconds is going to stick out. So you can add jitter, which is a percentage of that pattern. So those are kind of like the main capabilities. But the real cool thing about using a C2 is that you have agents or implants that you can deploy on different operating systems, and you get the same consistent shell. So if you're going out and acquiring infrastructure in other locations, you only have to learn one shell. If you're getting other operating systems, you only need this one shell. And if the C2 is logging everything you're doing and you can send that data to somewhere else, then that is where you have those benefits. Now, on the right, you see the C2 matrix. 2 seconds on that. The C2matrix.com, there's 55. I just added another one yesterday, 55 C2s that you can choose and look into. It has a number of different capabilities, as well as which ones do the logging. It's not on the screenshot, but if you scroll over to the right, you will see that as well. So any comments on this before we get to acquiring infra?
No, sir.
All right, and we've got 3 minutes to do 2 slides, so Godspeed, sir.
All right, just to be clear, this topic alone, I could teach a week class on, a week of works of class on. And to keep in mind, we're not saying do anything illegal. Don't use an IoT botnet or something like that to hunt an attacker. It's not a good look if your external threat hunting team is then the center of an investigation for illegal hacking. So don't do that. But you can purchase, as George mentioned before, purchasing is one of the ways that we do it now. The only thing is that we're very, very clean about how we purchase and information we leave behind, because our goal here is to actually interact with bad guys who may be able to do research and figure out who we are. The most interesting idea here is what I call resource sharing. So with threat intelligence partnerships I have, if somebody comes and says, "Hey, we're getting targeted by this attacker, we don't have the threat hunting capabilities," I can say literally spin up a Docker in your DMZ, and my team will be able to pivot through that into the attacker. They'll look like they're coming from your infrastructure, which gives them the ability to do to get things that may be blocked, payloads that are only being extremely targeted, and that really is one of the benefits of this, right? So if you can't do if an organization doesn't want to do a Docker or some other way to let you pivot and look like them, even pointing a DNS record at your hunting host is useful. As you can imagine, an actor grinding through a DNS list or new additions to a DNS list of a target company, suddenly this new one pops up. Although it's only a C name, it's got this IP address. They may go to it and find port 25 and send email to it, and they're actually interacting with our hunting infrastructure. So let's hit the next slide, because refinement is really what we need to talk about. All this stuff is fun, but if we're not putting a rigorous process in place and we're not able to dispassionately evaluate our own performance, we're not doing anything that well. So we're collecting dope, data on previous engagement. If you know anything about precision shooting, you know what a dope book is. And it's basically how you can record all your information about your activity, so you can then later go back and evaluate it and use that to understand your future performance, right? So these are the questions that I ask myself, and you should ask if this type of behavior is helping you, right? Can you clearly define what you hunted? Did you cast like a wide net and try to hunt every bad guy ever? Or were you able to come up with a list that actually has attackers that will target your organization? Were you able to find actors that were behaving similarly, but have different techniques? That's a win too. That is something that could inform your internal security team as to additional actors that could be targeting you, right? Have we collected enough data on their activity being the actor activity, to map a trajectory of their activity. This is, once again, can we tell the internal security teams anything useful about the actor activities we've been tracking so they can map out the trajectory very well. This is important as well. Did you collect enough activity on your own hunt to tell what kind of fingerprints you left behind on the actor infrastructure? So once again, if an actor is not interested in you, a good outcome of external threat hunting like this is not to get an actor interested in your organization that previously wasn't. And the last one, the most important question here, did what you do provide any definable actions for your blue, purple, red team? Because once again, in this day and age, right now, with the security problems we're having, issues with training, just all the information security issues combined, right now you should be taking an opportunity to do anything to enhance your security posture rather than doing nothing. Thank you very much for listening.
And thank you. This was awesome. These are the reference slides that we mentioned, and we are 1 minute over, so I apologize to everyone. I do want to just give a quick shout out to Kat, who helped us dry run this and really make these slides what they are. So really thank you so much. And thank you, Dave, for your time. And thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it. And we're on the Slack channel. If you have questions, we'll take them there.